Hi everybody, my name is Sam. I'm hosting this little video on figure drawing. This video is paired with our Super Sad Art Day 2021, where I'll be hosting live figure drawing over at Anton Art Center. I'm also going to be, we're going to start hosting monthly workshops for figure drawing with both live models and possibly some of the digital photographs off of a site that I like to use to get people either started drawing the figure or reintroduced or just having the tools needed, including models. For this video, I'm going to show you what materials I like to use when I'm roughing out and thinking of how to draw a figure. I'm going to start using my tablet with Procreate so I can draw right on top of the photo. That way you can see what I'm saying and kind of understand what I'm getting at a little bit better. And then I'm going to draw in my actual sketchbook. If you're new or rusty with figure drawing, don't be discouraged. It takes a stupid amount of practice to get even remotely good for some folks, and that's perfectly fine. Every time it's been a little while since I've drawn figures, they look rough, but you just got to push past that and keep going and going and going. And so in this little video, I'm going to give you some of those basic steps on how to start thinking about drawing the figure, how to start drawing the figure, and using these skills with a lot of practice. It'll help build your skill set to be able to draw really great figures. So to get started, I'm going to show you my materials. So laid out on my rug here, I have 3 different setups for ways that, or tool groups that you can use to draw your figure. If you don't have the fancy end art equipment, that's fine. You can just use some regular old line paper or scrap paper and a number 2 pencil. You don't have to stress about buying all the fancy tools. Most great masters we study now and love to look at in the museums, they would work with whatever they had around them, right? If you do want to get started in some of the fancier art materials, it's starting out, it's nice to just get a sketchbook bound either spiral or like glue bound, rigid bind are nice because then you can keep all your drawings together and you can view your progress. There's a lot of different pencil brands out there. Prismacolor is nice for pencil as well as colored pencil and all of that. I struggle to draw dark when I'm shadowing things. So here I have what's considered a soft set of pencils. You can see B means soft. HB is the middle. I forget F, and then H is hard, and so those are lighter pencils. So this whole kit's gonna draw very, very dark, which is nice for me because I struggle with that. There's just a plastic eraser. Staedtler is a real great brand. It doesn't mar, mark, or smear or rip up your paper. This looks like chewed up bubble gum here. This is my kneaded eraser. We use this to draw with, not to erase with, but to create highlights and stuff. Mine's packed full of charcoal because I do a lot of charcoal drawings, but just mushing and kneading and folding it over because it's real soft helps clean out all of that mess to use again. And then working small, a nice tool is these eraser pencils. And so there's that little bitty eraser and it works just like a clicky pencil and feeds out eraser so that you can use it just like a pencil and make highlight marks, right? And so that's a nice art material setup. And again, don't stress if you don't have that. Just any old paper and pencil, pen, marker, whatever you got works great. What I'm going to be starting with is my tablet and a program called Procreate. I think it's only $10 for those of you that like to work digitally. Using my pencil and tablet, you'll be able to see what I'm saying as I draw right on top of the photo. I think it helps clarify if I accidentally slip into terminology or explain things in weird ways. So once you have your selected materials, I suggest if you don't have anything in front of you right now, go ahead and give this video a pause, grab something to draw and draw on, and then we're going to move in to breaking down the how-to-dos. When I don't have access to a live model, I like to use line of action. You can draw figures, clothed and unclothed, hands, feet, faces with expressions, and animals and scenery. I grabbed this figure from their site to draw over top of on my tablet. And so I'm kind of blocking out some spatial lines. Helps me keep everything in frame if I'm trying to fill an entire page. And so I dropped in my center line where the shoulders are, the hips, the feet, and the top of the head. You try to look for bony areas if you can. Those are good frame builders, basically. Think of the skeleton within each of us as a frame to build on. I then look at some of the more muscular areas and limbs, and so the triangles at the trapezius, which is the shoulders there, drawing some lines so I know where the arms are going to be, blocking out the hips and the torso, and all of these are lines and shapes, right? You can see triangles, rectangles, the lines hitting different angles. And I'm shifting colors here because as you work with paper and pencil, your first lines should be drawn really faintly, and that's why I used that yellow. And then you start building up darker and darker, and so I'm going to increase around the color wheel. And so with the orange, you can see I'm building in more detail, but still really blocky. And I am drawing very quickly. This is how I work when I'm warming up to draw figures, and that's kind of what this whole video is going to be, is just working very quickly. At Super Sad Art Day, we're going to be outside drawing people at the event. And so some of them will move by really quick. And so you can see I'm reinforcing some of those lines and shapes. I've boxed out the arms more into rectangles, added some sweeping lines to the torso rectangle to get some of that curve in his lean. Kind of blocking in the legs a bit more. That almost rectangular shape there. Finding the feet. Feet are tricky. They're weird shapes when you think of them in geometric shapes. So bringing up my color to a red to get some more details. Trying to work inside of that face. Find the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth. He has facial hair, so I'm trying to fill that in. I know my lines are looking a bit messy, but that's okay in these quick gestural sketches. You're just trying to build up and up and up. And as you keep going, you'd start adding more, and it starts adding to your shadowing. And if you're working with like pencil and eraser, your eraser helps pull your highlights back out that you might lose. And the more lines that you build, you bury the other ones. They disappear into the shadows. And so now I'm starting to find some more of those specific lines. I'm not going into the tiny details, more of those curves and exterior lines of the body, the biceps, the chest muscles, the neck, the collarbone, different points of reference to help frame out the body where my eye kind of gets drawn to. And it's just building up some of those details. And I'm still thinking of every part as increasingly more complex of a shape, right? And so starting with rectangles to making them more trapezoidal and more sweeping, curving lines, and then pinching ends of them to fill in those shapes more and more. And I'll just keep building this up. Keep finding those details and working towards it. Now I'm pulling up the black to go in, and this is where I'd start filling in some more shadow. Because if you think of everything around you, it's not hard outlined. And so my final move is to go in with the softest and darkest pencil that I have, and I start finding those darkest shadows. I, like I mentioned, struggle to go real deep dark in my shadows, and so I try to hit those immediately. And so you can see me hitting some shadows on the abdomen and the arm, to just kind of fill those in. And I would just keep building those shadows up and up and up. And then go back in with my eraser and try to pull out some of the highlights, as you'll see me do here in a minute. It looks a little awkward on the digital because it erases the photograph as well. But then you just play back and forth with your shadows and highlights, pushing and pulling them back and forth until it looks right. So on the hand, help me find those digits. On the body, the torso area. So setting myself up in line in action. One of the cool things that you can do is select the various criteria to get multiple models. They'll set you up right with a timer so that you can have a warm-up and work your way into a longer pose. And so that's that class setting, and you pick how long your class is going to be. And so now working in my sketchbook, you can see on the right of your screen is the image from Line of Action, the photograph of the models. And on the left is me working in a sketchbook with one of my darker drawing pencils. And you can see me just going into it. I'm not worrying about the details, similar to what I was showing on the tablet. I'm just finding those sweeping lines. When it changes, I stop and move on. With these quicker paced sketches, I tend to work a little smaller, start getting loosened up on things. And I'm not wasting as much paper in my sketchbook that way. And so I kind of quarter off each page. Depending on the size of my sketchbook, I kind of like to quarter them. And I just start digging in, dropping lines and shapes and looking for those lines and shapes in the photo and how they appear. Some of the bodies they'll give you, some of these figure photos, are a little more complex. You get some weird foreshortening, some shadows and highlights on them. Can kind of throw you off for a minute. But just don't sweat it. Don't get inside of your head about it. And keep looking for those shapes, those curves, those lines, and just kind of scribble them in. A lot of my sketches will look just like a scribble in trying to find all those lines. So sped it up, but still it's more of that same process here. So this last bit of the video is going to go kind of high speed and look a bit jumpy. But you can see as those shapes pop out and start to develop, how I'm looking for, those lines I think I see to help me shadow in later on. What's fun about the Line of Action and the way they set up for it to get progressively longer, in the upper right hand, you'll see how many poses at the timed length there is. I tend to lose myself and not pay attention to those anymore. So then it gets really interesting that I'm still working in that quick gestural line way, finding my lines, my shapes, scribbling them in, blocking them out, shifting them around. And as the poses get longer, I don't entirely realize it. I just keep working and building my details out. And so it really does help take away some of the stress, because you're just building up your length of time a little bit at a time. And so you're still finding those centering lines, finding those shapes, and building them as you go. And you just get to add more and more detail because you're getting more and more time that you don't automatically anticipate. With the way the system's set up for this nice virtual one, you do eventually get a nice, depending how long you set your day for, like you'll get a good 30-minute to an hour or more of time with one of the selected photographs to just really dig in. This one here was one that the time all of a sudden lengthened in a way I wasn't entirely prepared for, and so I just started in to those shadows more aggressively to try to block out that shape. This pose was one that tripped me up, and that's okay. I didn't give up. I just keep looking for my shapes and my shadows, and I try to get the figure laid down right, get what's in his hand down on my paper. And these exercises, if practiced enough, help you build the skills needed to develop your own characters. So if you're into cartoons or comics or that, or pinups, you look at these figures enough time, you learn how the body sits and shapes and leans and shadows, and then you're able to create your own brand new characters just because you've developed this mental bank of how to draw the different body parts and poses that a person can make. As I get more time, I'm able to kind of push into that background area too, which helps pull out those highlights. And so you'll notice I'm scribbling in the background. I'm trying to darken that back area because a lot of these figures, it's a black backdrop. And the one in this white morph suit, having that black background really helped me see more of the highlights, see more of the body shape. And I went in with my eraser pencil to kind of highlight the area back up, bring those whites back out against that black background, and helps me find that shape a bit more. So hopefully my video helped you all get started with figure drawing, or maybe revisit it after not using it for a while. Hopefully some of the tips or tricks or introducing line of action as a resource gets you inspired to start drawing figures. My biggest advice is to not sweat it too much, not take it too seriously, and try to relax and have fun, which I know is easier to say than do sometimes. But I promise it'll be a more enjoyable, more productive process if you just let go and let the lines happen.